Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast. I am honored to have Joe Gardiner here again. We are going to talk about continuing ed and ranching for profit and all things education. Two things I really want to make sure we talk about today. One is, what is the value of continuing ed? We'll talk some about specific programs. But then also, Joe, one of the things you've done really well is implement what you learn. And I'd like to know a little from you about how and why that is. So give us a quick background. You've been on the show before, so we can do a quick summary, and then let's make sure everybody knows you have a website, coversandco.ca, where people can find you. So welcome to the show.
You betcha. Thanks for having me, John. So I was just a conventional farmer. We had grain and cattle. Very, very fortunate that my parents, right in and around BSE, were taking holistic management, HMS, right? Did I get the acronym right?
HMI or HRM?
HRM.
Okay.
You got it. Anyway, took holistic management and really enjoyed it. And I mean, I was just a teenager at the time, but they brought home some ideas that for me as a teenager and to all the neighbors around were just crazy. We were setting out weeks worth of feed for the cows and nobody was in the corral for winter. We were keeping calves on the cows for longer, doing things like not taking the second cut of hay and actually grazing it, trying to reduce machinery costs. So I was just blessed that I grew up in that farming environment where mom and dad were appreciative of outside information. They were doing personal development stuff and trying to bring those practices back to the farm. So, I mean, I'm just the luckiest guy in the world. I've talked to a lot of people across the prairies that are going through succession, and it's difficult 100% of the time. When I came back to the farm, my dad both my parents respected what I was trying to do, and they gave me full reins to do whatever we wanted to do on the farm. And let me tell you, there were some mistakes in there, but if they had tried to put the reins on me and we weren't going to get along, I wasn't going to be farming. So, I mean, that is the number one key in the success of my farming career, is just understanding parents that were willing to let me make mistakes. And then they trusted me enough that I was going to learn from them and we were going to move on. So anyway, our farm, we adapted cover crops. I kind of got obsessed with the idea of plant diversity and soil health, and we can improve our most valuable resource, which is our land resource. That kind of took me right through about 2014 to today. I still love going to soil health conferences, seeing new people presenting on new ideas and new concepts within the plant diversity and soil health world. And yeah, sorry, I probably ran through that a little quick, John, but that's a quick review of my background.
Yeah, awesome. And you're what I think of now as like the second generation holistic manager, right? Where your parents were involved in these types of things. And I lump all of these, whether it's Understanding Ag, which is one of the newer sort of organizations on the scene, and HRM or holistic management with Alan Savory at the beginning, RFP kind of a little bit in the middle, but then those two overlapped a lot. We're trying to understand what holistic management is and then trying to actually apply it on the ground. So you've taken the Ranching for Profit school. You've worked, you talked in one of our episodes about meeting Gabe Brown at his place, right? So really kind of understanding that. How do you see these things coming together? What you obviously are a lifelong learner. You're clearly interested in education. Tell me a little about how you're incorporating the different pieces that come with each of these sort of major trains of thought, if you will.
Yeah, so I think in an earlier episode, I gave the quote, which is one of my favorites. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And I talked in that. We went and visited, got 2 hours of uninterrupted Gabe Brown time on his farm, walking us around. And the three of us on the ride home came home and said, that ain't going to work at our place, 90 miles away. So, and I'll rewind a bit to my university education too. I give the University of Manitoba an incredibly hard time because I don't think, my education, what I was taught, it just didn't incorporate what, in my opinion, is important for farms to be successful if they're going to think even slightly outside the box. So that might have been a scenario of when I wasn't ready as a student, but I tell people, I'm like, my education started after I graduated university. no joke, YouTube was an amazing resource in the early days of the soil health movement. Anyone that was posting anything on YouTube, there was just a select few of us that were absolutely consuming and reconsuming that information. And like I said, my parents' history with holistic management and them getting exposure to succession, not just of land and finances, but succession of the decision-making process and how important that is. So I lost train on where you wanted me to go with that, John. I know I need to end at ranching for profit, but
Well, it doesn't have to end with ranching for profit. Like I say, I'm just curious about, you've brought all these different pieces together. How do you have a framework for sort of how they interact? Tell me about how you do that, because when you put all these different, they all teach the same fundamental principles, but then in different contexts and then with different emphasis. And so I'm just curious how you tie those together.
it kind of comes back to, am I willing to accept and understand the information that is being presented to me? Because like I said, in '07, Gabe Brown would have been excited and just so happy somebody was on his ranch that he could talk about what he was doing with that didn't think he was crazy. And I thought he was crazy, you know? So much of it is just being willing, okay, there might be better ideas out there. And if there is, I'm willing to at least listen to them, put some thought into them. And if it crosses those benchmarks, then we can try and implement on our farm. But is there a roadmap? No, I'm I'm very much a squirrel learner, which if you have my attention and my interest, it's going to be very hard for your voice to get out of my head. And I mean you specifically, John, because you were one of these people. When I think about sell by, it's usually from a narrator, John Haskell. So
That's
thank you for that.
hilarious. Yeah,
But
good.
is there a blueprint to like how to implement? No, it's just I get really excited about new ideas. Change has never really, for me, been super scary. I'm much more of the person that I'm excited of the prospect of what could be and less content of where I'm at right now, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. And again, this is one thing we talked earlier about, and I'll repeat, most of the people that take RFP don't actually apply any of it. And I think you had said something with your cohort that your, group of friends that you went to the school with, as you drove home, you decided a very small number of people in that class would apply it. Same with sell by marketing, same with stockmanship, whatever course you want to talk about. That's pretty important. So you are in that fairly small percentage that have actually put it into action. And I'm going to ask this is a harder question, I think, but what is it about you that makes you willing to do that? You come home and you actually do it. Is that true with every class you take, or does it have to cross a threshold, or is it?
No, no, I wouldn't say so. Probably the correct answer. My therapist and I are working on this very answer as we speak. No, I'm just kidding.
Perfect.
I heard the saying too, my blessing is my curse. I get really curious about stuff and I get really into things. There are few things that truly stick, but the things that stick have changed the direction or have changed the fulfillment of my life. Like rewinding back 15 years, if I hadn't got into soil health, where I would be and the doors that it has opened up from that point. So no, I listen and watch and read a lot of stuff. Not all of it sticks. However, it's like, if you're open enough to change and you can let your ego down enough that, hey, the way I'm doing it, there might be a better way. It makes the prospect of actually bringing these things home and implementing them a lot easier.
Yeah. Want to sharpen your business skills without leaving the ranch? Our Ranch Right webinars cover everything from the financial basics to business strategy and tax prep, all taught by our own ranching and finance experts from the team at Ranch Right. Join us online, ask questions, and get practical tools you can put to work tomorrow. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn to receive updates on our next session, and catch up on all of our past webinars by visiting and subscribing to Ranch Right LLC on YouTube. Okay, let's talk a little about that. You are part of what I think of as a growing trend of people that are coming into the holistic management world from the soil space. So those of us that have been in a while, the soil, it was kind of started with animals, and then it went to plants and land, and then it went to soil, because that's kind of how the evolution of the teaching has come. When you started with the soil perspective, and again, being primarily a farmer there, where were the gaps that you found?
Information. Back when we started, we actually, the goal of our website with Covers and Co. was to just take all this information that exists on YouTube and books and presenters and bring them all in one place so it's easy to source. So by far, that was the biggest gap. I mean, the leaps that we've made since 2018 are just unbelievable. Like in 2018, mycorrhizal fungi, like, there were some oddball scientists and white coats that were talking about it. And now, dare I say, the average farmer would know what mycorrhizal fungi is and the purposes that it does in the soil. So that was the biggest challenge starting out, was just getting good information that wasn't from 1948 from a university library or textbook, right?
Yeah, very good. And then how about from the standpoint of your operation? So I think early on, even with the practices your parents implemented from their learning in the 90s, you were able to see some improvement, right? And then
Oh, yeah.
your improvement on the ranch, on the land, improved further once you had begun your soil exploration. Where did you need to go next?
Well, maybe I know we're going to be a little bit tight for time here, John, but I think, as not that I want to include myself as one of the influencers in the soil health movement, but I think we missed something when there was all this excitement in the soil health and plant diversity. We talked about, all these different enterprises and things that we can do to improve the efficiency of the farm and stack these enterprises. What we didn't stress enough at the time, which is not that we're making a fundamental shift, we still focus on plant diversity and soil health. There's a lot of learning left to do, but we didn't do a good enough job selling the profitability aspect of what this can mean from a dollars and cents standpoint. One of my mentors here, he actually works for Understanding Ag. His name's Blaine Jarvis. He says, you can't be green if you're in the red. And God bless Gabe Brown. Like, I wouldn't be here without him. I don't know where the movement would be without Gabe Brown. But Gabe is a unique personality and a unique person who, I know he doesn't have success every single time, but when Gabe talks, it sounds so easy that you just go home and make this practice, and we're going to cut costs and be wildly more profitable. But I think what we needed to do a better job of with the soil health movement is really focus on, I mean, yes, improving the soil, and we're going to grow plants more economically, but really we need to fundamentally understand we're running a business, and what practices can we put in place to make sure the business is sound, and then start working on kind of the agronomy and implementing new practices and new enterprises. But too many of us as producers, we're not business people, but we
Could
should
not
be.
agree more.
We're running $1 million and multi-million dollar enterprises and don't know what a balance sheet is,
Or how to read one, or
Exactly. Or what are important ratios to look at.
okay, well that's kind of been my observation too, is that so many of us, and I'll include myself in this, right? We start with
Me
interest
too.
in rotational grazing. We start with interest in stockmanship. We really get hooked in and all that, and then later in our career find, oh wait, we really need to know the profitability and how that works. One thing you mentioned in one of our discussions that I want to follow up on is, even with a very well applied approach to soil health, really well applied management practices and all that, you were still struggling with profitability, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you betcha. Like that transition, John. I mean, I've told some really, really good stories about, this clicked and I jumped in. I could spend a equally long amount of time about this theory on a piece of paper. This intercrop looks really good, and I jump in head first, and it doesn't necessarily work out like that,
Yeah, but the one I want to make sure we do is that we talk about is that economics, especially, and this is also true with relationships, they don't just fix themselves, right? So if you take care of the soil, you definitely give yourself a much higher probability of being successful financially. But if you're not actually paying attention to the financials, it's not just going to solve itself. Most people that own ranches and farms are millions of dollars in debt, right? Those bills don't get just paid accidentally. Like, you better be pretty intentional about that part of the business if you want to be successful, right?
100%.
Yeah.
When I was going to all these conferences and coming home, and what we were doing was changing too much, too quick. if I had taken Ranching for Profit 5 years earlier and would have come home and try and break down all the enterprises that I had going on, it would have been very clear that this is more than what one person can handle. Never mind, I was starting a separate business. Never mind, I had a partner in a relationship that, I wanted to continue. It was too much. And then what happens is just like the Ranching for Profit, you are stuck in the Whitby because it is a mountain high of tasks. And now you're doing books for the accountant. You're a year and a half behind and figuring out, oh, actually a year and a half ago, we didn't make any money. And I wish I could change it, but I've already bought the inputs and the seed and the fertilizer and the rent for this year.
I'm
And
3/4 of the way through the next year. And
yes. So, like, in theory, some of those could have definitely worked, but there was no way of knowing that from a financial standpoint because I wasn't on top of the numbers, which excites me about going into the future, which is now we do have a really, really good handle on our finances, our enterprises that are all broken down. We know what's the most profitable enterprises and what's not. I mean, now it does excite me to bring on new enterprises because I know the fundamentals and I know we've got a sound business. So us making, even if it's a drastic change, if I keep it within the confines of what we're comfortable with from a risk standpoint, the farm's going to be okay.
yeah, I love it. Okay, so you touched on a few things. I just want to grab a few last ones, if there are any. Are there any other parts of the RFP curriculum, especially which sort of jumped out, really grabbed you, and then got you closer to where you want to be? And you're a relatively recent RFP attendee, so there's still more to come, I'm sure, in that story too.
Yes, I joked that I went to Ranching for Profit because I felt bad. I had consumed all their free content online and podcasts that I should give them some money.
Guilted you into attending, huh?
But it was, I mean, some of the things, the cow depreciation, the enterprises, I had a pretty good handle on. But it is an epidemic, not just in Canada. I'm positive in the States too, John. Farm succession is just, there's just no nice way of saying it. It is a headache right from the older generation that wants to get out to the younger generation that can't make a decision on the farm. And fortunately for us, we've got a family and a ranch. Everyone gets along. It was a long succession process, but we are finally done it and we got out of it. Everyone still gets together for Christmas. Everyone's got a great relationship. But even with all those positives going in our favor, it could have gone a very different direction. But it made me realize for our Covers & Co business, my business partner Trav and I had never once talked about succession. And I don't mean from us getting out, but succession from decision-making processes. And the other realization I had was we weren't business owners. We were self-employed. The only thing we had built was a business that still totally dependent on us being in it. So before we can even talk about how what succession looks 5 years from now, we have to solve that. So although I'm very blessed in the situation that I'm in, that our farm succession, we got a pretty good grasp on, it's just, it made me realize that, hey, these business principles, they are relatable, whether we're talking about farming or we're talking about a cover crop business or we're talking about a ranch management business. These are very, very important things that if you're just spend your day working in the business all the time, you're never going to get to the important stuff.
Yeah, and one of the things I do think about a lot is, and I keep being exposed to more and more as I work in different levels of things, is that the problems we talk about in ranching and farming are really the problems of small business. I know electricians and plumbers and contractors that have exactly the same problems. They're not in ranching, so it looks a little different, but it's the same thing. And these problems, it's wonderful that RFP focuses on ranching as their enterprise, the same way we do with Ranch Right. But, we get calls all the time for, hey, would you help us out? We have a manufacturing thing, or we have a storefront, or we don't do that, but it's amazing how the need is there. But the problems are fairly common. I don't think you can jump between different, not enterprises, but industries and be successful there. So
can I tell you one quick story, John? And it wasn't even it wasn't from Ranching for Profit. I told you this earlier. It was Dallas Mount was on a podcast, and he said, add up all your equipment and be honest with yourself. What's the market value of this equipment today? And at this point, we had sold off a bit of equipment, But he said, now whatever that value is, you got to add 20% to it. So that's opportunity cost, repairs, and depreciation. So I ran home and I made my entire list. I had it kind of made, but I added things and I did the total and times it by 20%. And sitting on my deck on a beautiful day in July, I looked at that number and I said, that's where all my money went.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Because all that stuff got to the farm, I was also paying 7 to 10% interest on it. And it just clicked like that. I'm like, we used to run more equipment than this. And I'm like, boy, would that be nice to have back $250,000 every year.
Yeah. Love it. Oh, good stuff. Good stuff. All right, Joe, I'm going to let you go. This is fantastic. Thank you very much for joining us today. Really appreciate the discussion. I think you again, obviously are a lifelong learner. Most of our customers are. Most of the people I deal with on a daily and weekly basis are. It's fantastic to see somebody that's willing to jump in and then not only learn about it, but then turn and take action and work at being effective at it. So congratulations on the stuff you have accomplished in your career. It's pretty exciting. And I'm really, you've got decades left. So I am very excited to see where it goes from here. So thanks again for being here today.
Well, John, that means a lot coming from you. And I appreciate you having me on. And if I can say kinder words for you to keep taking time out of your day to make this podcast, I'll keep taking time out of my day to promote the podcast. So keep at it and I'll keep doing that.
Perfect. All right. coversandco.ca. So
you betcha.
Yeah, that's your website. Awesome. Joe, you have a wonderful afternoon.
Same to you, John. Thanks a lot.
Thank you for tuning into the Ranchnomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.